have been filed as far as the resolution is concerned. Almost over 1,000 of them are still pending. And therefore, many of these assets over the next few months are going to go in for a bidding process. It's a great opportunity to come and look at some of these assets itself.
So we have a conference on insolvency and bankruptcy code, a new paradigm for stressed assets here at the Indian Consulate, and this kind of conference is happening for the first time. I have the pleasure of talking to Chairperson of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, Dr. M.S. Sausab. Thank you very much for being here. Yeah, I want to begin by the importance of education, which is always there. And you mentioned about the upcoming 2-year course, specially, which would give insolvency professionals to India. Why do you think we are ready and we have need for many, many insolvency professionals?
In everywhere in the world, the insolvency professionals have come from the professions of law, accountancy, management, company secretary. That means they have done a professional course in these disciplines, but thereafter, depending on the country, there are examination arrangements which these professionals take and then become insolvency professionals. The thinking India is having is that in addition to this route where we take the existing professionals with certain years of experience, why not groom a cadre of people from their beginning? That means just immediately after they have done a professional course, do not have as many years experience as required, but they go through a structured 2-year course with 1 year of a residential component, 1 year of hands-on internship, and then they become ready to be the professional. This kind of course does not exist anywhere in the world. This is the first initiative India is taking. Second, as regards the number or the need, today India has 2,200 insolvency professionals, though insolvency regime is only 2-year old. India is a huge market. Today India has 1.5 million companies. There are partnership firms, LLPs, and this law also covers insolvency for individuals, which covers a population of 1.3 billion. So the need for providing insolvency professional services for the companies and individuals who need it all over the country is much, much higher than any country can have.
So one question which is generic from common man's point of view, and do you see the financial dynamism which India is demonstrating these days is politically sensitive in terms of, we heard finance minister today, and do you see it is sustainable and it is going to move forward in the same direction? For example, if I may connect, we have seen certain banks failing in discharging their duties in fair manner, and all those connect with demonetization also. All these instruments or actions, are they also in alignment with this new focus on insolvency?
So there will always be fraud, mismanagement, malfeasance, and the degree may vary from country to country, and the degree may vary depending on the capability of enforcement actions that can be taken by the state authorities. Sometimes this kind of irregularity is noticed, sometimes it is not noticed, but insolvency and bankruptcy law says that while doing resolution, the insolvency professional has an obligation to look beyond the books for certain periods before the initiation of the proceedings. If there are some unfair transactions, irregular transactions, for example, there is a preferential transaction or undervalued transaction, somebody has been given an undue benefit, then those transactions can be reversed. And there is also a provision that if the business of a company is run at the cost of creditors, that means there is a twilight zone. Before twilight zone, it is the board of directors who have full control. After the twilight zone, that means the process has started, the creditors have full control. So before the insolvency process starts, till before the insolvency process starts, that means creditors have not come in. During that time, the board of directors have an additional responsibility to ensure that the creditors' interests are not affected in the continue business, then they are also liable. So this law has something over and above the resolution to catch hold of irregular things. Leaving aside this, the fundamental strength of the Indian economy, which is growing at 7+% over last 25 years, is not linked to any political thinking, any particular event. There will be pluses and minuses, but on average, if the country has sustained 25 years, 7% growth, I don't see that there is something which can derail it.
So I appreciate that last question, especially from the point of view of Indian Americans. Anything that you feel with increased transparency and overlap of laws and better understanding on financial track between India and America, certain developments which you would like our viewers to learn about?
Indian markets, particularly financial markets, have the best of standards the world can have. The Indian dematerialization story, Indian securities market, T+2 rolling settlement. These things happened much before the advanced countries or the developed countries have. So India has enough resilience in financial market. That is what gives confidence to outsiders to come and invest in Indian economy.
A bright morning here at Indian Consulate, special conference on insolvency and bankruptcy code. Pleasure of standing with Consul General Sandeep Chakravarti Sahab. The importance of this conference, first of its kind, and we also got the opportunity of listening to Finance Minister live here. How important do you think this conference is?
I think the importance of this conference is that we have as our panelist, the chairman of the Insolvency and Banking Board of India. We have the principal economic advisor to the finance minister, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal. We had the finance minister himself addressing this conference. I think the message that we want to give out is that investment in India is an exciting proposition, but investment in distressed assets are also very, very exciting proposition. And New York is the financial capital of the world. There is great deal of interest among the financial institutions, companies, legal institutions here in our insolvency and bankruptcy code. And I think today the message that is ringing out loud and clear is that these are the assets where the foreign investor should look at, because the cost of acquisition is much, much less than a normal greenfield project, or if you want to set up investment in India. The procedures are much less complicated. It's a very clear system now. It has got institutionalized in the last 2-3 years. Many cases have been resolved. So this is another set of assets which the US investors should very closely look at.
This is very important. It also shows the forward-looking approach of Indian government or in government of India, let us put it, moving beyond the political scenario. As I was talking to the chairperson, and he said that these are the sustainable changes for Indian economy, and it is not related to this or that political party. So moving in that direction, the significance of this clarity on the part of Indian administration for foreign investors, and anything in particular where Indian Americans should also pay extra attention to understand how it is evolving.
You see, our principal economic advisor said something very, very significant. He says, when we were a socialist country, it was very difficult to enter into the market. Then we made enormous economic reforms starting from 1991. Those reforms were very good, but it was very difficult to exit from for an investor. With this IBC, it is now very easy to enter into an Indian market. It is easy to invest. Also, it is easy to exit. If somebody feels that this investment is not worth it, he can take the IBC route and exit that investment. I think entry and exit both have to be easy and clear. Only then will India become a very exciting investment destination. And I think with IBC, the exit route is now very clear. A lot of resolution of distressed assets have taken place. The law is very clear. The Supreme Court has been very strict. The chairman IBBA was telling me there has not been a single stay order on any IBC proceeding. I think which is phenomenal in the Indian context, because as you know, some of our these cases are all mired in legal tangles. But this is some very heartwarming to know that none of these IBC proceedings have been subject to any stay order. And the Supreme Court have very clearly given guidelines. And I think this is very good. This will make, and also the finance minister was saying something which is very important, which is that the IBC is working as a deterrent to promoters. There was this culture of impunity where a promoter would take money from the banks and from other investors, then run the company to the ground, and he would go scot-free. That is not going to happen. I think this is a very dramatic change in our legal situation, and I think it is acting as deterrent. Many companies are now falling in line, paying their debts, paying back to the banks, and I think the banks will soon become very profitable. The NPAs are declining. So all in all, a wide sweeping reform. And I think it is of interest to our Indian community, because they are active participants in the financial sector. You see in this room, they represent the top financial companies of India, and almost all are Indians. So the New York is the financial capital of the world, but it is largely run by Indians. I think this is something to feel proud about, and that is why we are targeting them, to inviting them to look at this investment opportunity.
I appreciate you enlightening us on this. And the last question, we want to be hopeful, but we prefer to have cautious optimism. And from the point of view of the image which we have had in terms of India and red tape and bureaucracy and hurdles and complications in terms of litigations, even in the simple matters, sometimes it takes years. So from that point of view, especially in this new territory, when we are working towards attracting foreign investors, how do you see in terms of the apparent clarity at the moment with respect to the needed help which can reach to if somebody is in that situation?
I think the 2 years that have gone by have really shown the way. And I think today these people who have come all the way from India, they are talking about these nitty-gritties of, if there's a problem, what to do. But I think so far, as the minister himself was saying, the track record has been better than what they expected. There have been some bottlenecks and roadblocks, but those have been cleared expeditiously. And the rate at which and the speed at which it is happening, it is absolutely baffled even the people who thought about it. They didn't think that this will move so smoothly. And 12 major cases are on the way to resolution. Large number of cases are coming. And the statistics was being given by the chairman IBBA, and I think it is phenomenal. Nowhere in the world these things have happened. It's a landmark resolution. It is a landmark economic reform, because you have to understand it is in the context of the political legal situation of India, which is as such very complex. It's not easy to do things in India because of so many issues that are there. But the fact that an IBC has been passed by Parliament, and then now it is being implemented, and there are no stay orders, and the courts are supporting this, shows that there is consensus in India that we cannot allow these things to happen. Promoters who run companies to the ground should be held accountable. And I think the international community, the financial community, is responding positively. And I think so far Indian investors have been participating in this process. The idea is to welcome foreign investors also into this process.
Thank you very much, sir. Lots of good wishes.
Thank you.
Country Head of State Bank of India, Ashwani Kumar Tiwari ji, is with me in the middle of a special conference on insolvency and bankruptcy code, new paradigm. How relevant do you think as a banker the new awareness in this front from Government of India, and so much so that Finance Minister himself addressed it?
Correct. So I think as a bank, we do have, this is most important to us, because as you are aware, that in India today, the gross NPA figure for banks is close to 10% of the total loans. And this is a very large number, close to almost like 1,60,000 to 2 lakh crores. So this is such a large number. It is important that we find a good way to resolve this, because the efforts have been on for the last 5-7 years to solve these cases, and not much headway was made. For the first time through this act, a few large cases have already been solved or in the process of being solved. So in that sense, it's a great step. And therefore, to focus on this mechanism about which a lot of people had their skepticism whether it will work, because earlier steps have not worked. And therefore, it was important for this gathering here, especially in the US, because what is now needed is for all the distressed assets funds, of which there are so many in the US and it's a large market, to be assured of the fact that this is a great act and this is working. And therefore, to give that assurance, I think it was very, very kind of the Honorable Finance Minister to call in from there and assure everybody that government is keen on making this work. And as pointed out by Mr. Sahu in his address later on, who's the head of IBBI, that government's dues, the tax dues are 6th in priority in terms of list of all the dues which are there. The first dues are the cost of the resolution, then followed by the banks, and the workmen dues also are now equal to the banks. So in that sense, those are aspects which their investors here don't appreciate much. And the other aspect of it, which Mr. Shardul Shroff pointed out, which is that if you want to take a bilateral distressed asset from any bank or any investor, any promoter, the haircuts are much larger. They don't accept much larger haircuts. Here, it's a court process and haircuts are, much larger haircuts are accepted, and therefore they can buy assets at a cheaper price and maybe make good money. So it's a great opportunity for US investors, and for them to know about this, I think it's a great event happening here and it's important. Thank you.
So one question from layman's point of view, when we have the term stressed funds, some people get exactly what is being referred to, but for someone who is trying to understand the financial jargon, what is it which we refer to as stressed funds?
Okay, the funds are not stressed as such. Funds are investing in the assets or loans which are stressed or which are non-performing, which means they are not paying back. So if some loan is not paying back, it becomes what is called non-performing, and it may also be called stressed. Now, stressed may be without becoming non-performing also, which means there is a problem with payment, but it has not come to the stage of non-performing. So all such categories stressed. And in the US, it is typically called distressed. And therefore, any fund which invests in these assets, and it will try to buy it at a price which is much lower, when that is what is called a haircut to the existing holders. And therefore, after taking it, it might try to run it for some time as a good company, as a going company. And once things improve, obviously the valuations will improve and they can sell this or list it on a stock exchange to get more value. So that is what the concept is.
And one more last question for today related to non-performing assets. This became very much a currency of conversation with Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi and banks that were hit. So do you see the new this paradigm, insolvency and bankruptcy code, will it prevent those kind of situations from emerging again? Is it also providing some sort of exit for someone who is in a situation where they don't see anything else other than run away from country?
So these two cases you mentioned have unfortunately become the reflection or representation of things which are wrong with most promoters. But that is, in my view, they are not fully representative, because not every promoter is a crook or dishonest. And in these cases also, it is a court-ordained process which is currently on. So they have chosen to go away. And now, yesterday you might have read, Mr. Mallya is offering on Twitter the dues. The only question there is that if he's so serious about it, he could surely open an account under a court supervision process and deposit the money to show that he is serious about it. So anyways, I mean, I would not like to comment more on those. These are processes in the court. As far as this act goes, it will do two things. It is already doing two things. One is that, as Finance Minister pointed out, that so far the promoters never had to worry that they would lose the control of their factory or their business or whatever. It might go through the court process, which might go on for 5-10 years, and at the end there will be nothing left for anybody to take. But in the meantime, he will be running the business. For the first time in this case, as soon as the case is filed and accepted by the court in the NCLT, the promoter has to let go of the company, and the resolution professionals, which are basically law firms or the chartered accountants, these firms take over the company and they run it in the time while the process is getting done and the resolution is happening. So this losing control of business is the biggest change in this act. This is motivating, or rather creating, a fear among a lot of promoters. So now there is this urge, or there is this urgency to settle. Earlier that wasn't the case. They were not worried that if in case it goes to a court, so be it. We'll see in the court and I'll continue to have the business. So now, because there's this threat of business going away immediately, Therefore, a lot of them are settling even before the act has things are referred, or even if they are referred, they will like to settle and kind of take it out. As it was pointed out, 1,200 cases are currently there in the NCLT. 200 have been settled, 1,000 are pending, but almost 2 to 3,000 have been settled after filing the notice and they will withdraw, which clearly shows that people are trying to settle. On the exit route, yes, in case a bank wants to come out of this and it refers them, there might be an investor who might come in and another party who might come in and want to buy, and therefore the banks and other operational creditors. So the other thing which has happened is, so far all acts in India were in the favor of secured creditors. It is different matter, which means banks. It is a different matter that even the banks did not get much money because those things did not work out. Here, not only the banks, but operational creditors, like somebody has supplied, let's say, some raw materials to this firm, or electricity bill is not being paid. All of them are part of this. So it's a complete resolution of all the dues by a company. So in that sense, everybody gets benefited. I mean, in the Reliance case recently, Ericsson, which had supplied some towers, it's not a secured creditor, unsecured creditor, still could kind of stop the process and get them to settle, even as the banks had settled already. So which means that it is a much larger act, and therefore it is much better than earlier acts. It's working. Hopefully it will continue to give results.
Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to Country Head State Bank of India, Ashwin Kumar Tiwari ji.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and sitting here at the Indian Consulate today, an important conference, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Finance Minister also addressed live, and someone who is based here, an Indian American, lover of India, and has helped many of his clients file for bankruptcy here in the American system. When Karamji, I welcome you for this conversation. When you heard Finance Minister and Principal Economic Advisor, how do you see, if you compare the way India is approaching or rather is structuring or has structured a legal framework for bankruptcy code, comparing that with America, what comes to your mind?
Well, Ashokji, this is, India has taken an incredible stand. There was a political will, and that political will materialized into the Bankruptcy Code of 2016. This is an exceptional step towards condoning the people who cannot make payments, plus revitalizing the company. And the third thing, what the Indian government has done is, there were a lot of deadbeats, people who were not making payments, people who were not paying their creditors of the bank. And a lot of these companies were so-called operational, and they were one-sided in the sense they kept taking on money, they didn't repay the loans. The banks were very upset about it, and naturally the main central bank, Reserve Bank of India, is very concerned, was concerned. And so for them, it's a ready tool now. So what has happened now is there's a Damocles sword that either you make payments or you're going to be liquidated. So if they come to you, cross the Lakshman Rekha, if you cross that line where you're about to be called a deadbeat, then you're done, because then your assets are not your assets. There is this concept called non-performing assets. Actually, this is a very bad way of addressing something. There are non-performing human beings. Assets don't perform. It's the people who are vested with the non-performing assets. So it's basically a reflection of the people that are running the show. So my friend, Indian government has taken a great step, and it's a good one. And we're very happy, and they're moving fast. There's a political will. The financial community is very happy about it. We are all happy.
I appreciate that, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.